going to see how movies are used to influence, institutionalize general public society at large. So this is how we walk through it. We will show you what our hypothesis is and how we went about formulating it. Then we take a look at how we actually tested this hypothesis in the context of the content that we were given. Then we followed up by talking about the managerial context. So this is our hypothesis. Before I dive into what the content is, the way we formulated this is we had classes that talk about dialectical historical imperialism, and we were given an article that applied the same technique on one movie. It explored how the concepts that were pushed through the movie were actually contradictory in itself and how they seem to be pushing some sort of a hidden agenda. We did the same thing with the movie. The hypothesis that we have is that while modern society promotes the ideas of equality and justice, individuals' cravings for their sense of entitlement, some sort of stability and continuity inherently die hard. And this brings us to the conclusion that there is actually no selflessness, there are only varying degrees of selfishness. So to walk you through how we tested this hypothesis, what are the various factors that we considered, I would like to invite you.
So we were going to discuss both the movie life and it's pretty evident from the hypothesis that I saw just now. So this movie is a 1988 based action movie which is based on a 1979 novel which is called Nothing Lasts Forever. So the movie talks about this New York cop, this ideal New York cop who involves like a lot of action. His name is John McClane and he's this maverick kind of guy, macho, cowboy kind of guy who just single-handedly takes over the entire team of terrorists that attack the National building that he visits. So he visits California to meet his wife, who is separated from, and he goes there to get together with his wife on Christmas party and all that. And then what happens is that there is a group of terrorists who attack this particular building. And John McClane, and they take hostages of like the entire party people, entire amount of people who are like partying over there. And then John McClane single-handedly takes over the terrorists and then meets everybody down to the park and then goes to it. That's what essentially happens. So to talk a little bit about John McClane, he is this ideal cowboy kind of thing. So we'll have to boil it down to conservatism, liberalism, which is essentially the subtext present in the movie. So what was happening when the novel was written, Nothing Lasts Forever, was something interesting that so in the 1970s, in the late 1970s, I think there was a lot of social reforms and civil rights movement that was happening in the United States, followed by the oil crisis and the economic slowdown that happened in the United States and all over the world. So what happened in the oil crisis was the United States and Japan were primarily the two first countries to come out of the oil crisis, and the rest of the countries were still like struggling to come out. And incidentally, what we see in the movie is that so Americans are essentially taken as the hostages, and the people who own the organization are Japanese, and the people who attack the company are Germans. So what is shown in the movie is that Americans are never on the wrong side. So it's this Europeans, it's this Germans and Japanese. Incidentally, these two are like the main villains in World War II. Okay. So So we're going to talk about what happens in the movie and the contradictions in the movie and how the government, how the liberal government is ideally opposed in the movie. So John McClane in the movie, who is the protagonist, so he single-handedly takes up all the terrorists and he uses insane amount of violence and guns and this is a lot of violence to take out all the guys, which is promoted against by the US government. So what happened in the World War, in the Nam War, was that North Vietnam was supposed by the Chinese and South Vietnam was supported by US. So it was ideally a communist and non-communist kind of war. What happened in the movie was that the federals and the FBI, the FBI and the LAPD, the cops that try to help out John McClane and the hostages that are caught in the Nakatomi trial. So they are pretty ineffective in helping out John McClane, and they actually come in the way of him helping out the rebels. And there's like an anti-government institution, right? So this is what we actually talk about when we say about anti-government institutions. It's the federal and the FBI and the LAPD going against this way and interrupting them actually. And
so far we talked about how when the initial sentiment before the movie was made was one that there was a lot of churn happening in the American society, and there were all these civil rights movements, there was all this anti-war sentiment following from the Vietnam War, right? And we see that in the movie, as Sridhar pointed out, one, it is very pro-war. It seems to promote this sense of patriotism, and it seems to promote this use of weapons to curb anything that seems to threaten you. Another major interesting factor that we saw in the movie was this concept of xenophobia. As Sridhar already mentioned earlier, this entire movie seems to be a struggle between us versus them. So it's US against the world, US against foreigners. And we see this in multiple instances. We see it in the so-called terrorists who stormed the building. They're all Germans. We see this in the portrayal of the evil organization, which is the Japanese corporation that the terrorists have attacked. We also see this in several instances where, for example, the protagonist's wife doesn't use her husband's surname in the organization. She uses her maiden name, and she has to justify it, saying that in a Japanese organization, married women are not looked upon kindly. So, Japanese culture and Japanese work ethics are portrayed as something that pose a threat or pose a challenge to the American family values, to the American way of living and working. So, this is why we feel that one of the major subtexts in the movie is how American patriotism is pushed forward by playing on some sort of fear or threat that is posed by the external elements. We also see instances of racial discrimination, and again how this is in contrast with what is actually happening in American society at this point. We mentioned the civil rights movement. We mentioned how there was a greater push from the 1930s onwards for the removal of segregation, for greater rights for the African Americans. In the movie, this is brought about in a very subtle manner. There is so John McClane is one cop from New York, and there is another cop who is helping him while John McClane is holed up inside the building, and his name is Al. Now, Al is an African American cop who is portrayed as somebody who is overweight, racially different, and he is metaphorically emasculated. And how that is done is in the sense they say that they make him say the dialogue that he is shot a teenager during his early years as being a cop, and because of that he has some sort of a psychological trauma, and because of which he can't fire weapons anymore. So these are instances that we thought in a subtle manner brought about these different aspects where the people who made the movie or written or directed the movie were not completely in agreement with what was happening in the broader sense of the society, and they were pushing these ideas in a covert manner through the movie.
Now the last point is stand against women's equality. So in this movie we see instances of femininity initially, wherein the wife, Holly McClane, is a self-made woman. She's working for a huge Japanese corporation and she's earning a lot, and that in itself is again shown as being detrimental to the institution of marriage. So John McClane doesn't approve of his wife working. So that in a sense separates them initially. But later on, as we move forward, we see that John McClane is trying to reconcile during Christmas. He's come back to California. But there again he sees instances of femininity, like the wife being gifted a Rolex watch for her achievements. So he's enraged again. But at the end of it, he's shown removing the Rolex watch, which was essentially being held by the villain who is hanging from the floor, to get rid of him. So he in a sense has overpowered femininity is what we are thinking. Then later, through these instances which I've talked about, he's actually a Reagan Democrat. So who is Reagan Democrat? So Democrats initially or traditionally have been the liberals, wherein it is the government that solves problems for people, whereas the Republicans are the traditional conservatives, wherein they take control of the situation. They expect themselves to solve their problems. So initially, the working class men, like the New York cop that John McClane is, are Democrats, traditional Democrats, as if they are expecting government to do something for them. But we see through the instances of the situation in America during these times that affirmative action on the part of the government to support the poor or the African Americans or the minority as such enrages the working class men because they are not being helped by the government. The conservative nature, the inherent conservative nature in them comes out, which is what John McClane does. He never relinquishes control. He always thinks that he's the one who's in control and he never takes orders, be it from the FBI or the LAPD, for instance. So this is what the movie is about. So now let's come to the managerial context. So the first managerial context is we see a lot of firms taking pride in the fact that they're global and the workforce is from different countries. So they essentially promote multicultural groups and the harmony that they depict is what is the inherent meaning that they stand for. But we have observed that the workers themselves, when they are in a group of multicultural people, they tend to identify themselves with people which, from the region which they belong to, they also belong to. This is something that can be parallel, that can be a parallel with the context that we are projecting, which is the hypothesis again. So initially, there are certain ideas which the society is projecting or one is trying to project, but at the end of it, you go back to where you start from. In this context, you start with being liberal, but you end up being conservative, which you actually bear. So this is the context that we are projecting. And an example of this is, again, like the investment bankers that the earlier group talked about. Let's say the example of Bank of America merging with Merrill Lynch. So this is a commercial bank, Bank of America, which is merging with an investment bank, Merrill Lynch. So people at Merrill Lynch, they are so accustomed to the fast pace of investment bank that they do not want to relinquish control to a commercial bank, which the Bank of America is. So we see a lot of people initially happy with the merger because their bank is being saved by Bank of America, but inherently they're again thinking that we are not, we are superior to commercial banks, so why are we listening to them? This is the traditional clash of cultures which brings about the inherent feeling that okay, investment banking is better than commercial. So the next context, this is a little hypothetical. So we are seeing news articles about Modi rescuing 15,000 odd Gujaratis during the floods. So let's assume that this is true. So how is it going to impact the Gujarati population? They have a sense of entitlement that a man from Gujarat has gone ahead and done something for them. So although they are fine with people being saved, the inherent feeling is that he has done something for the Gujaratis. So this also fits in that context that we have.